So, okay, let's start by paying homage to the Buddha. Namo Dasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Dasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Dasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. So, last two times I introduced the Pali and then Pali grammar a bit. So now, so the first chapter, very first chapter, introduction, we maybe finished. So you can read it again, that one. But later, when we read or when you continue studying the previous lesson, also, occasionally I will introduce, I will refer this chapter again and again. So, like the other language, so in every language, verb is main. Verb is the most important one, the most important part of a language. So the same way in Pali also, verb is the most important one. So that is why. So in the first lesson, so we will learn the verb. Okay. So in Pali, to learn the verb, so at the very beginning, we need to know so how the verb is formed in Pali. So that is very important. So verb in Pali, so verb in Pali, are mainly so derived from three parts. Derived from three parts. That means, combining these three parts, so we can form the verb in Pali. So those three parts are the first one we call the root. Okay. So root is very basic, very primary. So that means we cannot trace back after the root. We cannot trace back, over the root. The verb is very basic, very start. Okay. So the meaning of the root in Pali is, the same as in English. For example, like the to eat infinitive one. Just referring to the action to eat, infinitive sense. So the first part is the root. Okay. And then So the second part is we call the conjugation sign. Conjugation signs. So when I introduce the Pali grammar, so I already introduced to you all. Pali is inflected language. So based on number, based on person, based on tense, those what form can be changed. Okay, that is inflected. So, and then in the inflected language, inflections, so we can divide two parts. One is for the noun, basically, or nama in Pali. So at that time, so the inflection of the noun form we call the declension. But inflection of the verb form we call the conjugations. So that is when we conjugate or when we change the form based on those persons, number or tense or mood, at the time we will use that. So conjugation as sign. Okay. The frankly speaking, that conjugation as sign has any special meaning. Just to divide or to classify this group belong to the first group, second group, third group, and so on. Okay, so that conjugation signs are actually 7 signs in Pali. Seven types. So that is why root also in Pali, basically we can say 7 types there are in Pali based on those signs. After this rule, we apply the first sign. That rule we call the first group. After the second group sign, second sign, we apply the another rule. That rule also can be called second group in this way. So that is a conjugation sign is based, you use for that purpose. It has any other sense or any other meaning. Maybe active sense also we can say later when we learn that one we will see. Okay, now basically please try to remember 7 types. So what are they also later we will learn. Okay, now just 3 parts. Verb derived from the 3 parts in Pali. The first one is root. So the meaning of that root has infinitive sense or infinitive meaning, like the to eat, to go, to sleep, to walk, just that. So the meaning of the root cannot denote who goes, or who went, or who will go. Okay, how many person go? Cannot denote, just infinitive sense the root has. And then the last part is we call the verb termination or verb ending. Verb termination. So that verb terminations can be that verb termination can denote present tense or mood or person, first person, second person, and that person, and singular or plural number. So those are denoted by that verb termination. So basically combining these 3 parts, we form the verb in Pali. Okay, so let me repeat. In Pali, so verb derived from the verb is derived from the 3 parts in Pali. The first part is root. The meaning of the root is just infinitive sense, to eat. And the second part is conjugation sign. Those conjugation signs are 7 types. So based on those types, root also roughly we can see 7 types, 7 kinds, or 7 group, or 7 classification. And then verb termination. So verb termination. That verb termination can denote what kind of tense. So seeing that verb termination, knowing that verb termination, so we can understand, oh, this verb is present tense, or past tense, or future tense, or first person, or singular, or plural, second person, and so on. So those 3 parts are denoted by that verb termination. Okay.
Hey, could I have a
Yes.
question? So what is the function or what is the purpose of the conjugational sign?
Just to classify roots.
Classifying what?
Root.
No, but classify what? Like, so let's say verbal terminations will denote or explain to us the verbs would have the tense, the person, the number.
Mm-hmm.
But for the conjugational side, it would classify the root. What is the purpose for the classification? Why do we need?
Okay. So, based on the conjugated sign, form or the verb also will be different. Okay, based on because of your question, I roughly introduce. Actually, in the second lesson, that one we will learn it thoroughly. So, for example, so that sign, the first sign is, a sign. The first sign is a. And then the second sign is neither and the a. So, for, verb form, for example, root da. Okay, here I will continue introductions. So 3 parts. The first part is root dawa. So the meaning of root dawa is to run. Okay, just to run. Now second, so after the root, that root dawa is belong to the first sign. First conjugated sign group. Okay, now we will use the at sign. And then now verb termination. Now verb termination is D. Okay. So now combining these 3 parts, we have da, wa, and the D. So a is the conjugation sign. Just okay, I write the short form, that sign. Okay. Now D is verb termination. So that means VT. Okay, this VT is present tense. And then the person. And then singular. Okay. So now joining these 3 parts after root dawa by adding this R, and then now verb termination D. So the meaning of root dawa is to run. Now we have the complete form, dawati at that time. So because of that person singular, subject, we already know that he or she or it. Generally, we know that subject already denoted by this verb termination. Okay, and then the meaning of root dawa. Okay, root dawa is to run. Okay, but so joining these verbal termination and the conjugation sign. So at that time, we already know that this form runs. He runs, she runs, or it runs. So the meaning of root dawa is to run, and the verbal termination denoted by verbal termination denotes present tense, that person, and singular. That is why he or she or it runs. The meaning already we know that. Now we don't find the function of the function of the sign. So that means the function of the conjugated sign, roughly we can see, just happen to form the verb, the verb form. Just participants to form a verb form. That is the function of the conjugated sign we can see, roughly. But the other way also, maybe in the traditional grammar, that conjugated sign when we use, in the active verbs. Active verbs. So that is why in translation also, he, she, it runs, not passive. Only that sense we find. Only that sense. Okay, let me repeat. So above in Pali, derived from the three parts. One is root, and then second is sign or conjugation sign. That is verbal termination. So root has only infinitive meaning. Okay, and the sign, also let me say, denote the just active. And verbal termination denotes, so present tense or mood or person or the number. Okay, so now you know that. Let me continue answering your question. Now this root dawa belong to the art sign or art group. Now the second root is cheat. The meaning of cheat is to cut. Okay, and the sign is here. R plus extra one is negida, neze. And the noun verbal termination. Okay, so at the time, now final form we have. So actually, instead of black sign should be hyphen sign. Okay, that means, cheat. After that, we should understand neither and the did. So the place of the neither is before the last consonant in the root. Okay, before the last consonant in the root. So now these are sign and the root verbal termination. So, and then, they are different group that is to be the same group that, so negida change to the na because of followed by the, dental group da sound, that is right. So now we have the change the d. Okay. Change. So change the d means he or she or it cuts. So you see, because of different sign, so different form, not cheated d, change the d. So that is, let me say, the function of that conjugation sign.
So let's say that the conjugational side, the function is just to participate in order for us to form the verb, right?
Right, right.
So given that, how do we know which side go to which root?
That is based on your, familiarity to Pali language.
So there would be no regulations or rules or anything.
No, impossible. Okay, so now the shortcut or the easy way to understand how to form a verb and how to conjugate that verb, the whole present tense. Okay, so now first step. So root to the root by adding that conjugation sign. So that one we call the base form. Okay, base form or base. And then the second stage to the base form by adding so that verb termination. Okay, present tense. Present tense verb termination. So we have present verb, any kind of present verb, or by adding the third person plural, we have the third person plural verb, second person singular, second person verb, and the second person plural by adding so the second person plural verb like that. Okay, so that is firstly to the root by adding the conjugation sign. So we have the base form. And to the base form by adding the that verb termination. So if we add present verb termination, we have the present verbs, all of the present verbs. If we add the past tense verb termination, and then we have the all of the past verbs. If we add future tense verb termination, we have the all of the future verbs. The other part, base form are not changed. Only by adding, by changing those verb terminations. So if we add present tense, we have the present verb. If we add past tense, we have the past verb. If we add future tense, we have the future verb. The same way, if we add imperative mood, we have the imperative mood verb. So base form is never changed. We don't need to change again. Okay, so now we already know that. So the first root is root dawa, and the part sign is R. So now we have root dawa, and the sign R. So we have the base form is da and the wa. So now we only know the present tense, that person singular. That is why we have the only present tense, that person singular. So that is why now we need to learn the present tense verb termination. Okay. So present tense, so verb termination. So here, person So singular and the plural. And then now third person singular is did. Okay. Present tense third person singular is did. We already use here. Change the D or to the dawa by adding the D. Okay, that is third person singular. Now, third person plural is anti. So even though anti complete form, R is within bracket. That means occasionally that R will be dropped, will be elided, or will be removed. But if necessary, we retain or remain it. Okay, that is that R is, put in the bracket. So now, so base is dawa. By adding the dawa, we have the d. We add by adding the d. So dawa d. So the meaning, he runs. But now we have that base dawa, right? To the dawa by adding the anti. Okay, by adding the anti here, r is within the bracket. So now to vowel, you see, dawa base also ending the r, and also starting with the r. So at that time, in Pali, even a single word, we don't use two vowel continuously. Okay, in a single word, we don't use two vowel continuously. So when two vowels meet together like this, one of them will be dropped. So now this R will be dropped. So that is why we have the, Dawandi. So this R is dropped. So now, Dawandi. This anti is present tense, third person, plural. So that is why the meaning of this, Dawandi, means they run. Okay. So base dawa is the same. We don't need to change anything. So only this vowel termination denote. So what kind of tense, what kind of person, and what kind of number. So now dawanti means they ran. Okay. So dawati or dawati, he runs. But dawanti, they ran. Now let's go to the second person. Present tense, second person, singular, vowel termination is C. Okay. Now to the dawa, base dawa, by adding the C, we have the dawa C. Okay. So dawa C is second person, singular. So you run. That was it mean you run. And then the same way. So plural sign is ta. So now we have this form. Da, wa, ta. Okay. So this verb termination is second person plural. That is fine. So you plural ran. So dawasi mean you singular ran, but dawata mean you plural ran. But in English the same, but in Pali different. Okay. So now let's move to the first person. So first person singular sign is me. Okay. And then plural sign is ma. So now basically we have the dawa mi. And then da wa ma. So, but for the first person, so this note you need to remember. So before me or ma, now when we see a vowel, so becomes long ah. So this note, please remember. So that is why this dawa mi become the dawa mi. So dawa mi, verb termination mi, the present tense, past person, singular. That is why, I run. So the same way, dawa ma before the ma, this you see, become long as r. So da wa ma. So ma is past person plural. That is why, we run. We run. So you see here only verb form, that person singular is dawati and plural is dawanti. Okay, so only verb we form now, but now subject we already understand. I. So here he runs, and then they run. So that is why in Pali, the speaker or the writer, he doesn't want to mention subject special subject. He doesn't want to, maybe, Michael or David or so someone. We don't want to express the subject. So at that time we can omit. But based on the verb termination, we can understand he or she or you or something like that. We can understand only above can denote the subject itself. General common subject, I mean. But if we want to, express the subject especially, so at the time, for example, a dog runs. So at that time, maybe a dog is sunaka. So sunako dawadi like that. We would. But so we don't want to say the subject especially. We don't want to emphasize on subject. So at the time, maybe above. So that means in Pali, in some sentences, so we cannot find subject. But based on the verb, we can understand common subject. So that one also important. Not like the other language, not like in English, not like Burmese, not like yours. Maybe such a language, Spanish, also like the ending. Or some, maybe the Germanic or something like that. The Spanish is also, occasionally they omit subject. Okay, so now to understand the present verb, so we need to remember these present verb termination. Okay, so present verb terminations are present tense verb terminations are just D and D, C, ta, me, ma. Only 6 words. D and D, C, ta, me, ma. Only 6 words. Very easy to remember. But please remember, the most easier one, the most forgetful one. The most easier to remember, the easiest or the easier to forget, forget. So, and also, even though we remember these D and D, C, ta, mi, ma, just remembering is not enough. So if we see D, automatically we need to understand, present tense. That person, singular. Only when if we understand in this way, we can understand the meaning of the whole verb. Dawadi me he ran. If we remember ma, so not just ma is not enough. Remember ma is not enough. So if we see ma, automatically we need to understand present tense, first person, plural. Okay, at the time dawama, we ran. Okay, so that is why. Now in this lesson, so you need to try to remember this present tense, verb termination, D and D, C, ta, me, ma. Okay. And also, please don't try to memorize. Don't try to memorize. Maybe you should do a postcard. And so whenever you go, whenever you learn, whenever you open your book, so put it to easily see it, easily read it. So instead of memorizing, okay, read it maybe once a day or twice a day. But later, at the end, you won't forget it. But if you memorize the and this time, maybe now you remember, you already memorized. But memorizing leading to the forgetting. Don't memorize. Okay, just trying to remember, trying to understand. The present tense, that person singular, and the mean present tense, that person plural. Okay, so now dawati or dawati, he runs, and the dawanti, they ran, and dawasi, you singular ran. Okay, and dawata, so you plural ran, and then dawami, I ran. Dawama, we ran. Okay. So now let me repeat today's lesson. So in this lesson, we learn about how to form verb. So in Pali, basically, verb derived from the three parts. So combining these three parts, we have verb form. Okay, one is root. Root is very basic, very origin. We cannot trace back yet anymore apart from that root or over that root. So root has just infinite sense, infinite meaning to eat, to go, to learn, to read. And then second part is conjugation sign. So conjugation sign has three types. Now first type we learn root. And then that one is verb termination. So verb termination can denote tense or mood and person and the number. So and then so to the root, by adding conjugating sign, we have the base form. We have the base form. Okay. So by adding the verb termination to that base form, we have the present verb. So now here 6 form based on the 3 past tense, 2 numbers. We have the 6 words: dawadi, dawandi, dawasi, dawata, and then dawami, dawama. Okay. So all of these 6 forms are just, result of to base form by adding the VT, verb termination. We have these 6 forms. Okay. So now, please try to read it. These present verb termination: D and D, C, ta, me, ma. Okay. So don't memorize. Don't try to memorize. Maybe while walking, you remember, oh, D and D, C, ta, me, ma. Okay, one time you recite. Maybe before breakfast, or you remember, oh, present tense. In Pali, verb termination: D and D, C, ta, me, ma. Okay. And then before sleeping, also one time. In this way, just once. So don't try to memorize. Okay, D and D, C, ta, mi, ma. And then one more information is here. Why adding to the verb base? Why adding verb termination to the verb base? So when we see mi, ma, verb termination, and then before the mi, ma, when we see a, so that become the noun. Okay, so to remember that point, we see before the me or ma. Okay, so this become noun. This formula, please note it. Okay, so now we already learned the present tense and the first conjugation is signed, and then how to form the complete verb in Pali. Okay. So now this verb also we need to see 3 parts of verb is root plus sign plus verb termination. There's another one formula. Trying to remember these 3 facts. Okay, we have the verb in Pali. So now we have 10 minutes. Let's see in Parliament easy. So in Parliament easy, first person is first, second person is second, that person is that. But in tradition, Pali tradition, traditional Pali grammar, that person is first. That is why I change. And also that one also how to say smooth to recite. Smooth to recite. Mima sita di andi or di andi sita mima. So di andi sita mima is maybe I think a bit smoother than the mima sita di andi. Later verb termination you will see. So and then you see the person and the number are determined by the verb termination. I already denoted by the verb termination. So they are understood even though they are not given in the sentence. So though person or number, subject, we don't see in the sentence but can be understood. And then the present tense generally states happening or action or okay, leave it that one. No, so just present and presence. But the important one is in Pali, we don't have continuous tense. We don't have epathetic sense or epathetic usage. But we can understand based on the context. For the epathetic, maybe I do run, also just, dawami. So that is when we see the verb dawami, based on the context, we can understand I ran, I do run, and also I am running. That is just based on context. We don't have, in Pali, we don't have the continuous tense or continuous verb form. Just dawami. Okay? So when we see dawami, I run. But based on context, I do run or I am running. So that is why when we translate English sentence into Pali, in English, maybe I am running. But in Pali, just dawami. In English, I run. In Pali, dawami also as well. Okay? So that point also important. And the others are, I already explained it. Okay, next exercise for the next time. So, okay, today we learned the present tense, verb termination, and how to form verb. So, now, question time to ask question. And then unclear to you, you can. Okay.
Yeah, I have 3 questions.
Yes.
Okay, so I will ask the conjugational side last, but just out of curiosity, like how for the third person plural auntie,
Mm-hmm.
so when we add it with a base, and if the base end with another vowel like dawanti,
Dawanti. Mm-hmm.
and the A got dropped, right?
Mm-hmm. Not A.
Oh, sorry, got dropped, right?
Mm.
So why it got dropped? Why not it just form a long
So maybe, before the double consonants. So when we use the double consonant, the first one, stress former sound, previous sound. So that means, So before the double consonant, when we see those 5 long vowel, any other long vowel, so their sound becomes, short. Even though, dawa, dawanti. So also here dawanti. If we write also dawanti, so unnecessary. That is automatically short.
So it's just like before any double consonants, the long vowels always got shortened.
Almost, mostly. Maybe just a few example exception. Just a few. Very rare.
Okay. So second question. So before me and ma, become long right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it just for what about other like u and e?
Only
Oh, so if there's like u and e, then it's just gonna be regular. Like if it's short, it just keep them short.
So yeah.
Okay. So back to the conjugational side, like how in terms of functions and purpose of the verb, right? This is just out of curiosity only.
Again, your question.
Maybe you go down, Pia. Where you say 7 types. No, this is like last lessons, not today lessons, Pia.
7 types of what? Oh,
7
sorry.
types of, yeah, where they verbs. Right here, go down. Yeah, right here, Pia. Stop. Yeah. So like how in terms of functions and in terms of purpose of the verb, just the root and the verbal terminations already let us know exactly the meaning. Does it make sense? So let's say when we have T, right, then we would know that it's the present tense, third person singular, and together with the root, we already know the meaning of it. So given that, would it be the conjugational side is just extra? So let's say if it dawa is to run, without the side, I would know. If you just say dawa, for example, without the right? Dawa T, then I would say, oh, okay, dawa is to run. T is third person singular present tense, and I would know he, she, or it's run. So what is the purpose of this conjugational side when it's like with the root and the verbal termination? I already know the meaning of it.
So just to classify root, and then so after some root we use sign up. After some root we use sign nasal and the up. After some root we use the other, any of the 7. So that is therefore a bit different.
But for what? This is like make it more complicated because even without it, we still already know the meaning.
So okay. Now, so when I introduce the consonants, those consonant has any not complete metric, right?
You
So
mean
that
like
is why the consonant itself cannot be pronounced. That one is one point.
That's right.
So now, so let me form, as you said. What happened? You see how to pronounce.
Davati.
No, you pronounce what completely?
Davati.
Davdi.
Yeah.
Davdi. Maybe quite difficult. That is one reason. Other time in Pali, so like this, where here, change the D. So nasal and da are different group. That is why they change to the same group. You see? Now, what and da also, what is the, how to say, a group-like consonant? That is dental consonant. So when you change to the double D, at the time so how to say unnecessary problem or the other problem we will face, maybe daddy, and also here double consonant. At the time we need to short that long vowel up. So at that time we see, so daddy as the whole of base, the whole of the root and the vowel termination are also very different from the origin. At the time, quite difficult to guess the meaning of the word. So to avoid such a unnecessary changing, we use conjugation sign. Let me see that point. So at the time, that will be.
So
That
you
is
are
just one reason, not to cover all root or verb.
So what are the other reasons? So what you argue right now is that the conjugational side is using for the phonetics purpose of forming the word so that it would be easy for the formations so that we will be able to pronounce, and the writing of the word is to be able to keep it on this regular, familiar base.
Right.
Okay, so that makes sense. Is any other reason, Pea?
So now the first verb is dawadi. So the second verb is, change the D. Today I teach you, I introduce. So if we don't use those signs, maybe dawdi, and then here also, chidi, very different from the origin. We don't see. And also one more thing. So language is
It's not
fast.
different at all.
No. Pay attention to me. The language is fast. Grammar is second. And so grammar is reconstructed grammar. Reconstructed for the second learner, or not for native learner. Okay, second native learner. So that is why in English or in your language, in Myanmar language, even though we reconstruct the grammar, though grammar cannot cover every language.
No,
that is
I'm not using English to compare to this. I'm just asking.
No. Actually, that is nature of language. I mean, nature of the grammar.
So anyway, what you're saying, and then according to Linda, the conjugational side serve as the bridge to make the pronunciation smoother. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Just for the purpose of phonetics, it's just for the purpose of pronunciation. But in terms of grammar, I do not see the purpose of grammar. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. So actually now very basic or very beginning we are learning. That is some point I don't introduce, not to block your understanding, but based on your question. So for example, change the D. Okay. Change the D mean he cuts. But as a passive, so one more information I told you, those signs are for the active voice. Okay. Now the form of that passive form is so chejedi. It is cut. You see, we don't see that na and the us. Huh? That is one point. Using those, the conjugate sign is to denote that is active form.
But if you say that the conjugational size is are, here there's still are.
This is second group. Because Dawadi is intransitive root, we don't have the passive form. Chandidi is transitive root, we have the passive form. That is what I choose. No R sign.
Okay, so that would be a different side, you say.
Right.
Okay, so for conjugational side, first is for the phonetics pronunciations, and second is to denote. So the purpose is to let us know what kind of voice it is, either active or passive.
Which one?
Conjugational side, the function of it.
Active.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that the art side, I'm talking about in general, the conjugational side, it will explain to us, first of all, the purpose is to make it easier for people to pronounce in terms of phonetics and
That is
pronunciation.
one reason.
And then that would give the voice of the verb, either active or passive.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
But in some form, we don't use that sign. Also later we will see. That is roughly I'm saying. Okay. Any more question? No more question? Okay. So let's stop here by saying sadhu 3 times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Good night, Bande.
Good night.
Thank you, Bante. Good night.
Welcome.
Good night, Bante.
Good night.